We're about 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Scarlet Fu and Vonnie Quinn here with you, and here to help take you through the closing bell, we've got a global simulcast. Tim Stenovec joins us, as well as Isabelle Lee. We bring together our Bloomberg Television, radio, and YouTube audiences worldwide as we parse through the most crucial moments of the trading day. And Tim, it doesn't look like a whole lot is going on when you look at the closing numbers here in the S&P 500, little changed, but it's been a walloper of a week in terms of some of the dynamics within.
Yeah, I think that's the exact right way to put it. The big banks reported, and certainly this week was a big one when it came to conversations and chatter around the future of Fed Chair Jay Powell and a lot of Fed speak ahead of that July 30th meeting. But if you thought this was a big week for earnings, check out what we got next week. Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, NXP, Lockheed Martin, Philip Morris, Coca-Cola. Are we going to hear about Sugar Coke? Maybe. Tesla next week as well. We'll get Southwest. We'll also get
That's just
Blackstone.
a sampler.
That's just a few. That's just a few.
But it's interesting because even with all the political grandstandings and even the recession warnings, the U.S. economy just really refuses to buckle, even with President Donald Trump berating Fed Chair Jerome Powell and newer central bankers really just debating the course of interest rates. We're still in a good shape, especially when it comes to the equity market.
It is pretty stunning, isn't it, Isabel? We just had Christina Hooper saying this is the calm before the storm, and it certainly feels like there could be more, at least squalls coming, let's put it that way, because we do have those tariffs. Just 1.5, I think, more weeks, 2 more weeks until the August 1st deadline. So, you know, we're bound to see more of those letters go out and more comments from the president. He couldn't even help himself. He was commenting on it earlier today during the signing of the Genius Act.
But that just goes to show that it can all be rolled out another week as well, because he's constantly moving goalposts, and the deadlines are, well, they've proven to be somewhat flexible, at least from his perspective. Let's take a look at how things are shaping up here as the closing bells rang here on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange and over at the NASDAQ. You have the S&P 500 finishing basically unchanged at 6296, so just below that 6,300 level, so very much holding near its record highs. The Dow Jones Industrial Average losing 1/3 of 1%, lower by 142 points, 44,341. The NASDAQ finishing marginally higher. And we take a look at the Russell 2000, the small caps. They are the laggards of the session, losing ground by 0.6% here on the day. Of course, when you look at how things fared for the week, we are looking at, let me just pull this up, gains all around here for the S&P 500. You have gains of about 4.9% for the Dow Industrials and 9.1% for the S&P 500.
You know, it just switched, but we were 250 in terms of gainers and decliners in the S&P 500. That's not how things settled, but pretty close to that. 255 stocks, moved higher. Isabelle, 244 moved lower.
If we look at the IMAP, this also tells the story because, Scarlett, you mentioned it earlier, but utilities were the best performer. We're talking mainly, though, Vistra Energy, for example, these utilities that are involved in power consumption by AI companies and so on, up 1.7%. But energy companies in general down 1%. So there was a lot of stories going on underneath. It wasn't just crypto week.
And just a quick correction, when I gave those numbers, I'm sorry, I was referring to volume, not the actual index levels, because the index levels are not moving like that on a weekly basis. The S&P 500 marginally higher by 0.6%. The NASDAQ little changed on the week.
All right, well, let's talk to some of the stocks that were on the move today and this week as well. A few of the gainers on my radar included Charles Schwab, up 2.9%. The company did report second quarter earnings earlier today. It topped estimates. Client assets hit a new record. Trading revenue increased. Rick Wurster, the company's new-ish CEO, he said they are continuing to build out digital assets. And it'll include spot trading and Bitcoin and Ethereum. The company expects that to be a, quote, meaningful growth driver. Also, watching shares of what's happening with crypto companies today because of that signing of the Genius Act in Washington. We heard comments from President Trump earlier today talking about that bill moving through Congress and ultimately ending up on his desk. Shares of Robinhood higher by 4% today. The president hailed that new law as a giant step to cement American dominance of global finance and crypto technology. It delivered a major victory for the digital asset industry. Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev was actually at the event at the White House today. The president called him out by name just a little bit ago. And finally, here's an interesting one. California Resources. It's an energy and carbon management company based in California. It popped in late trading. You can see it on the chart right there, up close to 7% on the day. This after news reports that Governor Gavin Newsom of California is proposing a bill to streamline permitting for new oil wells Environmental groups, though, are pushing back. They say it would wipe out scrutiny of the industry. California Resources up today by 6.7%.
On to the decliners, we have to start with Humana because shares closed just 1.5% lower, but intraday it was wild because the shares sank as much as 7.5%. That's the lowest since at least April 2017. So Humana lost its lawsuit seeking to reverse cuts to its Medicare bonus payment. So this is a blow for the insurer because they really hoped that the court would restore billions in revenue. So we're definitely going to see a squeeze in profits. We have Barclays telling Bloomberg in April that a win would have doubled their 2026 profit. So this is why stocks are edging down for now. Next is Lucid. So this is also in the red, down by 2.5%. Shares are just really consolidating after the massive jump we saw on Thursday, that's yesterday, which we saw the most in 2 years. So this came after the company said it was planning to team up with Uber and self-driving tech startup Nuro to launch a robo-taxi fleet. And last we have Chevron. Shares are down by almost 1%. So Chevron won the arbitration battle with Exxon, which is its larger rival, to finally close its acquisition of Hess. So the victory comes after more than 20 months after the deal was announced, which was worth $53 billion. So really at least a lot of overhang there lifted in the industry.
Yeah, overhang lifted, but it was something that investors were anticipating, which might explain why the shares ended up finishing lower. Let's take a look at what's happening across fixed income. The Treasury yield down across the curve, but certainly more so at the shorter end of the curve. The 2-year now down about 3 basis points to 3.86%. The 30-year finishing the week below 5%. But remember, it did reach about 5.07% on the day that President Trump, there were reports that President Trump was considering firing Jay Powell, really threatening the independence of the Federal Reserve.
Well, this story in the Wall Street Journal got our attention this afternoon, maybe because I'm always hungry. But if you've been to a McDonald's recently and you've ordered maybe, I don't know, some sort of chicken sandwich, a McChicken sandwich, and it hasn't come with lettuce, there's actually a reason why. It's because the snack wraps that they brought back have been such a hit that some McDonald's are actually running out of lettuce.
This is shocking because I can't ever imagine eating a burger without lettuce, tomato, bread. Even maybe I can live without the bread, but definitely not
I thought you were going to
lettuce.
say sesame seed buns. Isn't that part of the whole?
Pickle also
That's the
will be a
jingle,
good-
right?
Part of the
Terribly
commercial.
sad. It might be literally the only good thing in that whole snack. I mean, good as a nutritious.
I know what you
don't
meant.
at me,
It
McDonald's.
was still funny.
It just goes to show how big a player McDonald's is in anything, right? When demand for any of its goods changes, like it absorbs so much of the supply chain that things can run out. It on its own, if it launches a new product, there's a run on everything that goes into that particular
Well, and
sandwich.
that's why you have to wonder if the person who decided that this should make a comeback and thought it was going to be a success, and then enacted it, then why didn't they have enough lettuce? Why did they have
You
all
got
of
to
the
call
other?
you got to call Tim Cook in situations like that. That's his specialty. He's the supply chain guy.
So we're saying that McDonald's needs a new supply chain specialist?
I didn't say it,
A
but
lettuce specialist.
Didn't they have an issue with eggs too when they brought
They
back
did.
breakfast?
They did, but
Yeah.
they defended themselves. They said that the outage was brief and now resolved. So
well.
there is that.
Okay, people need their protein in the morning. All right, let's talk about another story, which is we know that private schools are a big deal here, certainly in the tri-state area. Have you heard of Harrow, which is a boarding school famed in the UK?
I had
I
not
haven't.
heard of it before this story.
Okay, I mean, it's like the second most famous British boarding school after Eton, but it now will be opening a New York-based offshoot. Vonnie, I know you've heard of Harrow.
I've heard of Harrow, yeah, tangentially since it's British, but yeah, this particular one is going to be run by the Amity Education Group, which is an Indian family foundation.
So it's licensed.
Exactly, it's fascinating. Also, I mean, I don't know about the visa situation and when they're going to be able to get that all sorted out, because not immediately apparently. But if you were a Harry Potter fan and you wanted to go to the school that served as a stand-in for the Harry Potter movie, then you would want to go here, because this particular school actually served as that stand-in.
Yeah, well, the one in New York won't be the stand-in for the Harry Potter school, but they're going to be opening one in New York, and it's not in the city of New York, and it's not in Long Island, and it's not in the Hamptons, which is where a lot of New York's moneyed elite summer and have their second homes, but it's going to be somewhere in between. So it's kind of a school for people who kind of make their way between their Manhattan homes and their Hampton homes.
And $75,000 is the price tag for tuition, right?
Including boarding though, Tim.
So, which actually seems, if you're in the world of New York City private schools, kind of the cost of a day school here in New York City.
You're saying it's reasonable.
Yeah, which is a different conversation, the cost of education. But all right, grab your Quidditch brooms and head on over to the new school, Harrow International School in New York.